Hello and welcome to another edition of the Super Show. I am your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dub Deuce 85. I'm going to be joined, as always, by Pete Cole. He'll be joining me for the CFB portion of the show. We are doing the combo CFL, CFB stuff. I'm going to break down the 4-game CFL slate for you guys that are still grinding that with me. We're also going to cover the tomorrow night CFB showdown between Lafayette and Ohio, and then the 2-game Friday slate with UCF, Louisville, Maryland, Illinois. So give you guys our thoughts on that. And then tomorrow night, we'll be breaking down the main slate, the Saturday main slate in our show. So make sure you guys are there. Another big week of football ahead. We continue to profit in CFL. We had a really nice week last week. Michael Riley went off against Ottawa, another 30-plus performance. Our value lock, Ryan Davis, caught a touchdown. So looking to continue that momentum into week 7 here of CFL. And what is it? Week 3 of CFB. So lots going on. If you're not a member of YFC yet, you need to get over there, yourfielderschoice.com. We are still running the special promotion. Half off your first 2 months. So you're looking at $25 for each month, as opposed to the 50, which gets you access to every sport we offer, from college sports to niche sports like esports, soccer, MLB, NFL. Just started, so lots of good stuff. You don't want to miss out on that. We also have cheat sheets available for everything. I have cheat sheets for college football now. Saturday morning on the show, when I'm on, I will go over the ownership with you guys and any value, stuff like that, directly off of our cheat sheet. So you definitely want to use that in comparison with our top plays articles and what me and Pete like as a whole. Just a really good DFS player is going to use a combination of all 3 of those things. So let's jump in and talk about CFL. If you guys are watching live, we appreciate you as always. Go ahead and drop questions in the live chat box there to the right. If you're watching on demand, jump in the Discord, ask us there, or you can find us on Twitter, me especially at DubDeuce85. So first game on the slate I want to talk about is Calgary, the Stampeders versus the Hamilton Tiger Cats. We have the Tiger Cats minus 3.5. It is one of the lower over-unders at 41.5. There's some injury situations here. Dane Evans is going to be out for Hamilton. He's going to be out long-term with a lower body injury, 4 to 6 weeks. They did start the season with former college, stud Jeremiah Masoli, but he lost the job. Masoli, he didn't play because of injury earlier this month, and kind of, like I said, just lost his job to Evans in general. So now he's dealing with the rib injury. There's a chance he will play. It's tough to pay the 9.9 for him when he couldn't beat out Evans even when healthy. So I guess there's a chance that it could be David Watford who actually plays. Watford came in the Toronto game there and threw 6 for 10, 78 yards. So at 7K, I suppose maybe he's in play. One of the things that sucks is Calgary secondary has been giving up a lot of yardage. Their defense, especially in the air, has been susceptible to fantasy points. But the Hamilton QB situation is just really not something I want to delve into when there's some safer options. Running back for Hamilton, same kind of thing. Thomas Erlington had a touchdown last week, only 4 carries, 28 yards. Really tough to trust them. Don Jackson was back. He got 4 carries, so they kind of split. So it's just really the situation is not too great for their running backs. And then you look to wide receivers. Addison and Posey are still out for Hamilton. Brandon Bakes was a bit of a surprise scratch last week. It came out right before a log. Some people missed it, but he's still undisclosed, may not play. Price is way too high anyways. Jalen Ackland 7K, Tucker 5.8. It's just the Hamilton team. It's really not a very targetable DFS unit right now. That's too bad because they do have weapons. On the Calgary side, though, I'm definitely looking to use some of their guys. Bo Levi Mitchell came back last week, so Jake Meyer's back, as the backup. Threw for 276 and a touchdown with that 1 interception. 15 fantasy points. It's just okay at 9.7. I'm not really looking to use him. And our guy, Kadeem Carey, and this is kind of a tougher matchup for him too. He's just not getting the work that you want to see in the passing game. You see lately, he's only got 1 catch in the last 2 games after having 10 catches in the prior 3. So with Bo Levi there, I don't know that he's going to be getting the checkdowns he did like with Meyer. He did have 11 carries for just 45 yards against Edmonton, but there's really some better running backs to target. It's the wide receivers, though, that we want to look at. Kumar Jordan at 6'9", he's really starting to emerge as the go-to guy. He missed 2019 with an injury. His pre-2019 numbers, so 2018, he caught 55 passes for 944 and 6 touchdowns. He was targeted 74 times. So that was his career year. Everybody was, Jordan's going to be a star in this league. And then he suffered that injury. Well, this year he looks healthy. He's already been targeted 49 times through 6 games. So he's on pace to just shatter his target career high and then every other career number. If he doesn't go over 1,000 yards, I'd be shocked. So I'm going to be using him. I think it's unfortunate that his price is up, but I think he's going to eventually become like a 9K guy at full strength when it's all said and done. So I'm going to use him. He was been hovering around the 7K price tag last week anyway. So 6'9" is a bargain. 12 catches for 159 and a touchdown with Bo Levi. There was some talk that maybe those numbers would go down with Bo Levi because Meyer really favored him, but this is Bo Levi's guy. I mean, even back in week 2 where they played, week 1, against Toronto, he had 585 and a touchdown. So he's just getting targeted heavily. His last 3 games, he hasn't caught below 7 receptions. So I definitely really like him. Probably one of those guys that I'm going to be locking into my main lineup. And then looking at Markeith Ambles, I think his price makes no sense at all at only 5'9". He's actually the target leader on this team with 56. So he's definitely in play for GPPs as kind of a pivot. I do think Jordan will be kind of chalky. And then Josh Huff, he's, kind of remains a safe option. Another guy that's, below 6K. He's got 42 targets on the year, 29 catches, 412 yards. He just hasn't found the end zone yet. So he doesn't have a lot of touchdown upside right now, but he is a very reliable baby blanket-esque target for Bo Levi. So definitely can look at him as well. But for me, running out my main lineup here, Kumar Jordan is just a guy that I think is a no-brainer. Toronto versus SSK. We have that as -5 for Saskatchewan. I think Toronto has a chance to win this, though, if Fajardo can't go. 42.5 over-under. So with SSK at quarterback, Cody Fajardo suffered a concussion. He couldn't play for part of that game. There's still a chance he misses. They're calling it a minor concussion. But if he can't go, they're going to be looking to Isaac Harker, who's there at 7'7". Harker came in against Winnipeg. They got blown out anyways. He threw 10 for 13, though. Not bad, completing 77%, 89 yards. Ran 3 times for 14 yards, but he also fumbled the ball once. So that's going to affect the SSK guys because if they have to go to Harker, they're going to be looking to go to William Powell. But Toronto's defense, which is actually fairly capable so far this year, could easily just stack up and predict the run and try to stop him there and make Harker throw the ball. And this is also going to hurt someone like Kieran Moore, who we were big on last week. He was industry chalk. He did have 5 for 64. A little bit of a letdown, but still kept his double-digit streak going. He's now scored 11 plus fantasy points in every single game this year. Coming off that 10 for 79 game against Winnipeg the week before, but he's really not that interesting to me unless Fajardo is there because Fajardo can run. The defense has to prepare for that, which makes throwing easier. With Harker, I don't think he's going to be really a threat to run that much, so they're going to be prepared. So I am a little leery on Moore unless we get Fajardo news in time. Jordan Williams Lambert is unlikely to play. He's dealing with an injury. Shaq Evans is on the IR, so this kind of makes Braden Lanius interesting at 4-2. He's coming off a game where he had 2 catches for 57 yards. He actually has 2 catches or more in every single game this season. So he's not a bad look, kind of sliding into that WR2 role behind Moore with Lambert injured. It's 15 catches for 219 yards and a touchdown. So at 4-2, that's a decent value play that you could look at. He's looked good in the past. McRoberts maybe at 3-6, even though I think he's back on the practice squad. So the Toronto side of things, Arbuckle, just when you think you can write him off, he comes back and has a decent game. Had almost 20 fantasy points last time out. Threw the ball 37 times against Hamilton. A touchdown. He did have 2 interceptions, but they didn't yank him for Bethel Thompson this time. So at 8-2, he's fine, I think. Really, it's probably just looking at one player on this team for me, and he's actually a running back, although DK has moved him back to wide receiver for some reason, but DJ Foster, who's 4-1. He's actually kind of the 1B to John White's 1A at the running back spot. John White is out carrying him, but Foster's still getting a good amount of touches. You see, he has 3 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown last week against Hamilton. Only 3 carries and 1 yard, so he got stuffed in the ground, but he still scored 15 fantasy points, and he outscored John White for the 3rd week in a row. So DJ Foster, who should be at running back, which is actually fun because I'm going to keep plugging in Andrew Harris, who I'll talk about in a second. I was going to play him regardless. So Foster was a running back. I just flex him anyway. So now I can slide him in as a wide receiver at 4-1. I know I'm going to get at least 7 to 10 touches at minimum out of this guy at 4-10, and he's really involved in the passing game. He has 9 catches in his 3 games played so far for 115 yards and a touchdown. He also has 116 ground yards and a touchdown on the ground, although 101 of those yards was in his first week playing. The last 2 weeks, he's only rushed for 15. So it seems like they're trying to use him more as the passing down back, and he will get 3 to 5 carries and then also 3 to 5 targets. So 4-1, he's pretty much a no-brainer, whereas John White at 8-1 is kind of out of the passing game a little bit. I know he had a catch last week, but he's going to get about, 10 to 12 carries, and he's going to have to score a touchdown to make value. So DJ Foster for Toronto is your other main team play. Going over to BC and Montreal, we have Montreal -4, over under a 48.5. So by 6 points, this is the highest over under on the slate by 6 points, which is higher than the SSK game of 42.5. This is going to be probably likely a shootout. So you can really look to target both sides pretty heavily in your lineup, and that may end up being a pretty chalky option. Vernon Adams 10-4. He's been pretty mediocre through his first 3 games. He had a major breakout against Ottawa. Everyone usually does. Ottawa's the team that I'm going to continue stacking against, like I mentioned last week. Alas, Ottawa's on a bye this week, so we can't target against them. But Adams did have 31.2 fantasy points last time out. He's a nice dual threat option. People forget he's averaging 40 rushing yards per game, which isn't a whole lot. But in this league, you don't see quarterbacks running that much that aren't named Cody Fajardo. So that 40 rushing yards gives him a pretty high floor. The passing game in Montreal is especially starting to cook. He's got 4 legit weapons at that wide receiver spot. He has 9 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions through his first 4 games, so nice ratio. The BC secondary has allowed 2 different quarterbacks this year alone to throw for 296 plus yards, and that's in 5 games. Most recent being Dom Davis, the backup quarterback for Ottawa, who took over, threw for 333 yards and a touchdown last week. And he's mostly known as a mobile quarterback that runs. So the fact that he could throw for 300 plus tells me that Adams could possibly throw for 400 plus. He's rounding into form. If he doesn't throw for 300 plus and like 2 or 3 touchdowns, I'd be very surprised. So 10-4 is a premium option. Michael Riley at 9-4 for BC in the very same game on the other side. So you're getting a 1K discount from Adams if you need that money for a wide receiver or to pay up somewhere else. Riley's been treating us well. The last 2 of the last 3 weeks, he had a bye in there, but he played Ottawa twice. He had 33.5 against them last week. Really not that highly owned, somewhere around 25 to 30% again. Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry if you guys are watching live. I guess my audio went out there, so I apologize. Anyways, Michael Riley, yeah. So he has rushing upside in terms of touchdown equity, but his rushing yardage isn't all that great. So just know you're rostering him to throw, 300 plus yards and maybe, get a rushing touchdown for us. So either quarterback in this game is definitely in play. It's just a matter of what's going to fit your build more. If you take Adams at 10-4, or if you need that 1K with Riley, but I love both. Running backs in this game, I do think you could look at William Stanback. Maybe I was messing up again. Okay. All right. So William Stanback 8-7. If you don't go with Adams and maybe you go with the Riley side, then I would highly recommend going with Stanback because that's going to give you, that kind of a game where you think it's going to be more on the rushing side. He is a contrarian way to do that. True bell cow. He hasn't had that breakout game yet, but he has scored 14 plus fantasy points in 3 of his 4 games so far. So he has a very high floor for his price. The only problem with him is that he's useless in the passing game. When Adams throws, he rarely checks down to stand back. He's usually throwing to one of his 4 receivers, his 4 main receivers, I should say. He does average right on 15 carries per game, though. Rock solid 5.8 YPC, pushing on 6 yardage. So he's definitely a guy to consider. And there's some positive, there's regression here when his touchdowns are considered. He's only scored 1 touchdown, but there's going to be an opportunity for him to really break out and score multiple touchdowns soon. this could very well be that game. So I definitely am a stand back fan. And then looking at the wide receivers on the Montreal side, there's a lot to like. Jake Winneke at 6'5". We've been rolling him out on a weekly basis. He just had another big game for us 2 weeks ago. He's caught 21 of his 28 targets on the year, 4 touchdowns against Ottawa. He had 7, 118, and 2. Look for him to, easily catch another touchdown here. He's just that burner type. Adams is looking for him. He's targeting him at a high rate. Eugene Lewis is his other guy that he's targeting at a high rate, but I just feel really confident and comfortable with Winneke right now. BJ Cunningham, Quan Bray, and Eugene Lewis are all going to factor into this game at different levels. If you're running multiple lineups, you should definitely sprinkle them in, rotate them around, get some Lewis, get some Cunningham, maybe some Bray, because the touchdown variance will be kind of, deep with those guys, whereas I think Jake's going to get a guaranteed touchdown. So definitely consider using those guys with Adams and your various lineups. But Jake Winneke is definitely the number one play at 6'5". Pairing him with Jordan and Foster is going to give you a really strong lineup. As far as BC goes, Brian Burnham is just a stud. I just caught 5 catches, 72 yards, 2 touchdowns last week. Lucky Whitehead's really been the guy that's been getting all of the hype, especially with those early breakout games he's had. But Burnham's really just Mr. Reliable. I know 10K is a lot to pay, so he makes sense as maybe a contrarian type play. If you go with the Riley Burnham pairing in a lineup with running back with stand back, you're going to have exposure to the high scoring game without even being able to, worry about ownership too much. He has caught 24 of his 28 targets on the season. He leads the team with 3 receiving touchdowns. So, like I said, a really good contrarian pay up option at the position that shouldn't see that much ownership. I'm not really looking at Whitehead at 7.2 is a good price for him. He did have 3 for 82 last week, so he's always a threat for 100 plus receiving yards. He did returns last week against Ottawa at 138 return yards and a touchdown, which pushed his score up to 24. If he's going to be returning kicks on the regular, he's definitely going to be in play for GPPs at 7.2, but he's just a little bit high variant for me in terms of getting touchdowns, because right now it's we have some guys that we can guarantee to get some. As a GPP play, Javon Kotoye, he's 6'1", but the last 2 weeks he has 9 catches, well over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. It does seem that Riley's starting to look his way, so they like him. And then the last game on the slate here, Winnipeg versus Edmonton. We've got Winnipeg as a solid 6.5 point favorite, 41.5 over under, so the lowest on the slate. I'm not really probably looking at too much on the quarterback side here. I would say as kind of a pure punt type of thing with Zach Claros at 8K. It's an interesting price for him. He has thrown for 240 plus in 3 straight games. He's only been under 15 fantasy points 1 time this season. He's got a stud running back behind him in Andrew Harris, who you guys know I love. So he's going to get you anywhere from 15 to 18 fantasy points, which certainly won't kill you at 8K. You load him in there, and then you run Burnham, Harris, Wilder, a bunch of these high-powered offensive options. And you can definitely have a good GPP lineup. So I'm not going to be running a main lineup or anything, but he's definitely in play at 8K. There's nothing wrong with that. But Andrew Harris, 9.2. Still waiting on the blow-up game from him. I'm going to keep plugging him in as my RB1. It just makes too much sense. He's usually a 10K guy. He's going to be 10K soon. The hope here really is that the industry, after he had 9 fantasy points last week, he almost had 100 yards. He just didn't get that touchdown they were looking for. They feel burned. Hopefully they look elsewhere. So that's what we're really hoping for. Also on paper, people that are going to look, they're going to see Edmonton Elks rush defense is very strong. They're one of the stronger rushing defenses in the league. But that is a little deceptive. They've only faced really one true bell cow in their 5 games, and that was William Standback of Montreal, who we just talked about, and he had 110 plus rushing yards against them. So the one time they faced somebody that was a real threat, they gave up a ton of yards. They had 4 other games. It was a horrible Ottawa rushing group that is just terrible, the worst in the league by far. Shaq Cooper of BC, who's playing banged up. And then Kadeem Carey of Calgary, and the 2 Calgary games, they had to throw the ball because they fell behind and they weren't checking down to carry. He had like 9 to 10 carries, and he was just okay. So when they faced a team with a good running script and a strong running back, they did give up 110 plus yards. So I'm not afraid of Harris against the Edmonton Elks defense. I do think that's something that people are going to over embellish or worry about just a little too much. So I'm confident that 1, Harris crosses 100 yards, or 2, he scores a touchdown or 2 this week. So one of those 2 things is going to happen. So I'm riding with my guy. And then when it comes to receivers, I still really like Nimdensky, the main slot back at 6'2". He's another guy that I can kind of slide in there next to Jordan and Winneke and Foster and feel really good. Last week against SSK, he had 5 catches for 134 yards. The week before that, he had 3 catches, 41 yards, and a touchdown. He missed, I think it was week 3 or week 4 with an injury, but he's fully healthy now. Just a really strong overall option, somebody that we can count on, to get us reliable work. He has 26 targets in 4 games. He missed 2. He had 21 catches for 313 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's actually second on the team behind Kenny Lawler in yardage, despite playing 2 less games than everybody else. Speaking of Lawler, he has 46 targets on the season, 32 catches for 468 yards, 3 touchdowns. So Lawler is also a fairly good option, somebody that you can rely on. He's only 6'3". Adams, who's back at 7'8", their typical WR1 isn't really stealing the work away. It's really been Lawler and Dembski, and like I said, Dembski's just a guy that they're gonna find a way to get him the ball in different situations. So you can look at him as well, possibly as a pairing partner for Claros. But I like him alone without any other exposure to Winnipeg, besides Harris in my main lineup. For Edmonton, I'm looking at James Wilder at 8'9". That's a pretty juicy price for him. He's a PPR stud running back. He's coming off another, I should say not another good game, but sub 10 fantasy points against Calgary last week. He's had 2 games under 10 this year, but 2 other games over 20 when he's getting that PPR work. You see, he's been targeted 25 times so far this year. He's caught 19 of those. And then he has a 5.7 YPC on the ground. So he's a guy that could theoretically rush for 100 yards and catch 100 yards, depending on how the game script looks. He's another one that's bound to see some positive regression when it comes to scoring touchdowns. He has 1 so far this year. Edmonton's touchdowns have been very random. Earlier in the season, they weren't scoring them, and now that they are, it's been kind of on the random side because it hasn't been Wilder, and it hasn't been Jerrell Walker. So Wilder's a guy that I like as well, 8'9". He probably will see less than 20% ownership because of the way that people are building their lineups so far from what I see. He makes sense as a very strong GPP play, and I wouldn't mind putting him into my main lineup as well if I can fit him. As far as receivers go for Edmonton, like I mentioned, it's been kind of random. 1 week Mike Jones, he got some touchdowns, and then Greg Ellison, Shea Ross, Tolliver is a kid they brought in, Jalen Tolliver. He did good 2 weeks ago, and then he kind of disappeared last week. So it's very, very random. Makes it hard to play Jerrell Walker right now. His price is 8.6, which is down from the 9.3 price. He had 5 catches for 43 yards. He's contributing each week, but it's just he hasn't crossed that 100-yard mark, and he hasn't scored a touchdown yet. So he is a guy I want to continue to get exposure to in my alt lineups because a breakout game is coming for him as well. He does have 27 catches for 333 yards on the season. So it's really only a matter of time for him. As far as his targets go, he has 38, which is the team lead in front of Ellingson. So they're looking his way. Trevor Harris is trying to find him. And speaking of Trevor Harris, we're fading him this week. I don't like him against the Winnipeg defense. I feel like he's going to get sacked a ton. Winnipeg's defense kind of regressed there in week 3 or week 4. But then last week against SSK, they were sack machines. And they actually just beat the hell out of Saskatchewan back-to-back weeks. Granted, Fajardo was hurt last week, part of the game. He wasn't the week before. They held them under 20 points combined in the 2 games. So the Winnipeg defense is scary again, meaning if I'm targeting Edmonton, it's probably just Wilder as kind of like a check down option. I'm not looking to play Harris this week. I think he's going to score less than 15 fantasy points. So that's pretty much it for CFL. There's no prize picks anymore. If you're doing betting at all, or if you're looking for any of those plays, I do like the Toronto money line outright or +5 against SSK, especially if Fajardo doesn't play. I would assume if it's announced that Fajardo doesn't play, that line will change. And then I also like Winnipeg to cover 6.5 and the over 48.5 in BC Montreal. So there's 3 bets you can possibly look at. Core wise, I'm I'm going to be coring DJ Foster because 4-1 is a joke price. I don't get that at all. Jake Winneke at 6.5 is a lock, and then Andrew Harris at 9.2. I'm just going to keep plugging him in and let that explosion game come, because 3 or 4 weeks from now, when he's 10K or 10.2K, we're going to be like looking back on 9.2 finally wondering why we didn't stuff him in every single lineup. So CFL is still a fun grind. There is a 2K to first GPP for this weekend. The 2 games on Friday, 2 games on Saturday, so it's not drawn out throughout the entire weekend. It's not a game on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday or anything. So if you're looking to play, definitely jump in, grind that on Friday. There is, as I mentioned, and Pete talked about this the other day, NFL, money's out there. There are some casual players who maybe don't play DFS as much. They come into it for NFL, win a little bit of money. It's burning a hole in their pocket, as they say, and they come and play MLB, which we see our MLB team is smashing. And they'll try CFB. They may even try CFL. So there's money out there to be won in these niche sports still. So keep grinding with me on the CFL train, because it's definitely going to be making us money consistently. Let's bring Pete on now and talk about some CFB. We'll start off with the Ohio versus Louisiana Lafayette showdown, which is taking place tomorrow, 5 PST, 8 EST. We have some 2K to first GPPs in that alone. But Pete, how are you? Let's talk some college football now. How are you?
What's up, Walter? I'm actually trying to find some depth charts here. Actually, no, I got it for Ohio. So and it's going good. It's been a good week. We had a smashing week last weekend for college football. Pretty much cashed everything beside the Friday night when my quarterback didn't play, but it was still a good weekend. Smashing MLB right now, so everything is going well. And another week of college football, and we get the showdown. And I'm not even sure what to make of this showdown. So I think we need to talk this through and figure it out, because man, we got a mess here. These two teams. We got a good chalk. Good chalk cash quarterback, and that's pretty much it. If you ask me, there's so many questions here. So it's a good show. Yep. It's a good show to actually go through this shit and talk about it and talk about the Friday night slate, the two games, and we'll figure it out, come up with something, because, hey, everybody else is in the same position as us, right?
Let's do it. Yeah. And just to throw it out there too, you guys, we'll keep grinding Saturdays. That late night slate, we both crushed that too. I know you crushed the day, and I don't know if you had a chance to play that one, but you did the week before. But that late night
slate, the night, not the late night.
Usually 4 or 5 games, and it's typically West Coast teams. Remains to me the biggest edge in DFS right now. Maybe MLB is the biggest edge because you're killing it right now. But as far as niche sports go, the CFP side is we're just crushing it. Elijah Cooks was like 17%, caught a couple of touchdowns. Calvin Turner was like 20%. He went nuts. So I just want to throw that out there for you guys, that if you're picking and choosing and you're not trying to grind every slate because of bankroll purposes, that is one I think you guys really want to concentrate on going forward. All right. So with that being said, we have a showdown, Ohio versus Lafayette. This is going to be tough, because we know Lafayette, they're typically, at least last year, they were relied on the run a lot. We know Ohio, they want to run a lot. But if they're going to get pummeled here, they're not going to be able to. Right now, it's ULL minus 21, 57 over under. You mentioned quarterback, so yeah, Levi Lewis. But I don't know if I want to necessarily captain him. Although there's enough value on the slate, because there's no locks up top between, after Lacey, there's a lot of 7K guys that I could do without. I'm not that confident in. So I guess we could captain Levi Lewis. But man, it's really tough, because there's no guarantee Lacey's even going to be the one that catches a touchdown, right? And we need to get status reports here on, we had was Rogers, if he's questionable, Errol Rogers. I know we need to figure that out. And then on the Ohio side, our guy last year during the MAC season, Isaiah Cox, he had a nice season. He hasn't yet played. We're waiting for him, because if he were to play at 3-2, he'd be pretty sexy. Buckner is questionable for them. Jerome Buckner, he was a guy who had a pretty big game recently. So there's a lot in play here for injuries and things like that. But yeah, it does seem like Levi Lewis is going to be a guy that you probably have to have in your lineup, because this ULL team, they look a lot different from last year. They don't have to pop at running back like they did. And Lewis has thrown 73 times in 2 games so far, which is not your typical Levi Lewis. Against Texas, he had to, because they fell behind. But then you see a Nicholls State game, he threw 33 times. But that was a closer game than I think anyone thought it would be. They only won by 3. So, Levi Lewis, I definitely think is a lock. Would you find yourself having to just go ahead and captain him because all the other uncertainty on this slate, or would you like to look elsewhere at captain?
At the end of the day, he's probably the smart pick. The cash play. Do I want to play him? Not really. But if you look at projections, he's probably like 8 or 9 points higher than anybody else. Of course, his price is higher, but I don't know. It all depends on this. It all depends on this rushing, and right now there's a lack of rushing for Louisiana. So, I mean, right now everything's looking at first Chris Smith's first year starter, but he hasn't done much. But I mean, the offensive line hasn't done much either. So they're not performing, and they got 5 starters back this year. So it's weird. So Smith's going to have a good game here eventually because he does catch balls out of the backfield and he does run. I mean, he's a decent player. I'm looking at a 12.9 price for captain with Levi Lewis is 20. But I want to get away from Lewis, maybe at least in GPPs, because to me, Lewis is still more of a game manager. I mean, he is averaging 8 more passes attempts per game throughout 2 games, mainly because of the problems of the rushing. His completion rate is up 64%. He's averaging almost 90 more yards per game through the air, but once again, because the rushing game is not working. And here's the thing: we got weather problems Thursday night too. So we're talking about what, almost 50% chance of rain. We have winds 8-9 miles an hour, which is obviously going to affect the Ohio quarterback too, more because he can't throw away. So that's him trying to throw the ball in rain and wind. So, I mean, smart play, yeah. Lewis is your cash captain. He's expensive, but he's going to be popular. But I really, at GVPs, I want to get away from him, and I want to find out one play that we can go to where it's probably going to be Chris Smith, I guess. At 12.9 price. There's a lot of problems here, man. I mean, you even looking at on the Ohio slate. I mean, I jumped around, but then you got Tuggle, who we all like, but he's not. I mean, he's not exactly. He's actually sharing. Actually, O'Shawn Alice is actually out touching him. So Tuggle's out, definitely the better running back. I'm assuming he's going to get more run on Thursday night. I mean, he's far better player. Yeah, I mean, he had 86. Yeah, 86, I mean, plus he returns kicks. So this is a mess. I mean, to me, it's pretty much Lewis is your captain of cash. He's got to run it. He's going to be popular, and he's a quarterback. He's still going to accumulate points. But where do you go as your captain in GVPs? And to me, he's between like Tuggle and a Chris Smith because these receivers are all over the place, and these run defenses, both teams are not doing well right now.
Yeah, and looking at the receivers right now for Lafayette, we'll start there. Targets: Kieran Lacey has 10 targets, so he's number 1 technically, but
he's
6 receptions, 67-1. Chris Smith, who you just mentioned, he's actually second on the team with 7 targets out of the backfield, 5 catches. Michael Jefferson, 6 targets. Dante Fleming, 6. Jalen Williams, 6. Errol Rogers, who's hurt right now, 6. I do like him if you were to play. John Stevens, 4. The transfer, I believe, out of TCU. He had a nice game. And then Peter LeBlanc's down there at 3. And LeBlanc's the guy that we thought last year was going to end up doing something, and he really hasn't. So you see that Lafayette's going to use 7, maybe even 8 different receivers if Roger plays. So it's really tricky to trust any of them. That's why I'm saying even Lacey, at what, 8K in utility, it's tough for me to even justify paying that price because there's really no guarantee because this offense wants to run more when it can or throw those short intermediate passes. And you look at, he's had 13 and 5.7 at 8K. That's really not that good. Although on this type of shutdown, it may be good. So we'll have to see what happens with Rodgers on the Ohio side. This is a team, you mentioned they want to run as well. The run defenses for both isn't great, especially for Ohio's. Let's look at their targets real quick. Because if Isaiah Cox were to play, I think he might even be worth a main team shot because he was so good last year. But Tyler Walton, 11 targets. Cameron Odom, we remember him from last year, 9 targets. Jerome Buckner, 9 targets. He's hurt right now. Tuggle, 3. And then we have Allison with 1, and then James Bostic and Ryan Lerman, the tight end, with 4 and 5 respectively. So there's not a lot of separation there from them either, except maybe a guy like Tyler Walton.
Price.
Yeah, that's why. Let's pull up last year. So if Isaiah Cox were to play, they had Shane Hooks too, of course. Isaiah Cox, he had that one big game. He had 7 catches in 3 games. They only played 3 games, but 9 targets, 7 catches for 142 yards and a touchdown. So kind of a burner type player if he were to play. I kind of like that at 3-2. But yeah, it's really tough to trust any of these guys. You're really going to look at the running situation. I think even though Ohio may end up having to throw because they're going to be down, I think they'll still try to force the run because that's the strength of their game. I'm still a believer in Tuggle. I think he has the touchdown upside, regardless of where they are on the field. Allison's probably a guy that you want to run because he's 3'6". I could see him ending up being pretty popular. You see, he's got 19, almost 20 carries in the 2 games there. He has a catch, no touchdowns yet, but yeah, this is really not a showdown. You definitely want to practice good bankroll management here because there's going to be some wackiness. And don't think that definitely. Curtis works like his brother. His brother Nate, who's in the CFL right now. He was he was a dual threat guy. Curtis really isn't that guy. He has the ability to score on the ground, but he's a lot less accurate with his throwing, and it's a tough price to pay for him. So this might be just a 1 quarterback showdown, load up elsewhere. With that being said, if Buckner ends up being out, could you see yourself using a Walton, at 4'8", the target leader of the team, or someone who's a little more, who has been reliable in the past with Cameron Odom? Odom kind of that shorter pass guy at 5'4", or do you want to ignore the receivers entirely for Ohio?
If it was anybody, it would definitely go to Tyler Walton. I mean, him and Odom did dominate snap counts. It's weird because we saw Buckner in week 1. He had a huge game.
Yeah.
And then against Duquesne, he had 0 catches. Then he hurt his shoulder. Yep. So
I think it was early too.
To me, Odom's the. Walton's the play at 4'8". Over Odom probably just.
Okay, makes sense.
I would take Walton. This weird thing is and also this Louisiana, this rush defense is okay. I can see because they got beat by Bijan Robinson. All right, that's cool. But then they went out and they allowed 152 yards rushing Nickel State. So what's going on there? So I want to play Demontre Tuggle also. I think Tuggle's probably the most talented player in this whole game, honestly, out of everybody. But we do know Ohio has always been a 2-back offense, but Tuggle is definitely the far better player between him and Allison. So, but then you look at Allison at 3'6" and Tuggle's at 9'4". So when you see an Allison right now is getting more touches, right? Yeah, this is a mess. This is a mess. There's a lot of guessing games here. It's a GBP slate to me.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because they lost that game against Duquesne was bad. They lost, so yeah, it was odd to see Tuggle not out touch him. I think there's a world where you could play both Tuggle possibly and Allison in your same lineup because of how cheap he is, and that's going to guarantee the touches. That's where I think it'll make sense to go them over the wide receivers because we just don't know. Lerman's down there, the tight end. At 1.6. Or 1.4, sorry, and he's going to get a couple catches, maybe 4 points. Where Allison, maybe we can eke out 7 or 8 from him. You have Bostich there at 1.6, who had a couple catches in the first one, has been targeted in game 2, but didn't make any catches. So you're really just guessing. If Isaiah Cox plays, I would play him as my receiver exposure from Ohio at 3-2. Personally, I'd go right at him because I think if he's going to play, he's good to go. Otherwise, I don't know that I'll even play any of the Ohio guys. I think I might just play Tuggle and Allison and hope for the best and then roll, four Lafayette guys, the QB, the running back, and then maybe 2 of the cheaper wide receivers or something like that. Because I just don't have any confidence in them. Odom does have that nice 3 for 74, but I think, like you said, Walton's probably a little bit better. Just it's only like 600 cheaper and he has 11 targets to Odom's 9. But yeah, you're kind of splitting hairs here with what you do. So what about
you can't go wrong though with a 3.6 price on Allison, really. When he's actually out snapping Tuggle. We do know Tuggle's a better player though, but you can't go wrong with a 3.6 price. He's gonna get snaps, he's gonna get some touches. So
yeah, if Rogers can play for Lafayette, I think I would be pretty close to all in at 4.2 on him. Against Texas, he was balling out 5 for 50. The extent of his injury, still we're waiting to hear that news. So 4.2, he would be a guy. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know that I would even pay $8K for Lacey. I don't see myself doing that. Do you?
I know. The only thing is we do know Lacey's the clear cut number 1. Obviously that's what it looks like. He's got 6 catches on 12 targets, and he's not that much Price. What's Lacey's 8, and then LeBlanc is 5. I'm not messing with Peter LeBlanc this year until he shows you something. And then Jalen Williams is 7-6, and you definitely go to Lacey there. It's the only thing with Lacey though. At least you know the ball's going to go there though. So maybe you do try to make a lineup with with the quarterback, and then a Lacey, and then you get a cheap Allison, and then this may be more of a game. But also, you throw the kicker in. That's what I was looking for before we came on the air. I do know that we do know the Louisiana kicker is Almendaris, and I think this may be a game Almendaris at 4-4. You play Almendaris and cash. At least you know that he should be able to get a couple points. It looks like the kicker for Ohio was Steven Johnson. So I honestly I don't know nothing about Steven Johnson. So
yeah,
that's what the depth chart is showing us.
This seems like a slate where, and if we're talking about playing the kicker, which is a move you like to roll in the NFL showdowns, and it worked for you last year, and it works sometimes in CFB for some of these high-powered offenses. But it's going to be a kind of an ugly slate if we're prioritizing the kicker. So I think you're right. Playing the Lafayette kicker, there's going to be a bunch of times where Lafayette stalls out, in the red zone, and they settle for 3 points. So you might as well take those points. I will say I wish he was cheaper, but I have interest in the TCU transfer, John Stevens. He had the 348 and a touchdown. He's got 4 targets in the 2 games. I don't know, man. I feel like he's pretty decent. He didn't play much in 2020, but in 2019, 22 targets in short limited action, 11 catches for 144. So he's a capable guy. I did read an article earlier today that Lewis and him, they had a little something going the past week or 2 at practice. So we'll see. It's not like you're getting a big discount on him at 5'8", unfortunately.
Right.
If he was like 3K, I might be looking at him more. That's where I would love it if Rodgers played. I think if Aaron Rodgers played, I don't know that we'd be having this conversation. I think we'd just be playing him at 4-2, because Rodgers, he didn't get in that second game. And you see target wise, he had 6 targets. So I know that Lacey's leading the team in targets, but Rodgers in the one game at 6. And if you would have played week 2, I'm pretty sure he'd be over Lacey. So I think Rodgers is that dude, but he's just banged up as hell right now. So as far as the showdown goes, take nothing else from us. Play it lightly. Don't go super crazy on it. Probably, you're gonna need to captain in your main the Levi Lewis. Although I think there's an argument to captaining Chris Smith, just because we know his touches are going to come there too, and he gets catches. And then rolling the 2 running backs from Ohio, which I know doesn't make a lot of sense on paper traditionally if they're favored or they're projected to lose by 21. But Ohio's just they're not gonna be passing too much if they can help it. They really rely on their rushing game to get them where they are. This is definitely not the Rourke. This Rourke brother is nothing like his older brother, who was just a machine.
No, I was gonna say, because at least Nathan Rourke would run a little bit, right? And,
yeah, he would.
And Curtis, and I was looking to. He's completed 70% of his passes, which is cool, but he's also 6.2 yards per attempt. And I was just reading somewhere, and this is like a Tommy DeVito type quarterback. So, he's Todd Centil, these guys. So he's not his brother. His brother could run a little bit. You're not going to see this kid run. So you're not going to see Curtis Rourke run. But also, you do know he's the quarterback. You do know you got some guaranteed points there. Also, you're probably going to get I don't know, 15 points, something like that from him. So at least you get something from him. I do like the Chris Smith call. That's a 7K difference between him and Lewis. And Smith's, I got a feeling eventually going to see a breakout game here from Chris Smith. And this would probably be the get right type of game. Ohio's allowing 225 yards per game on the ground through 2 weeks. So this is the get right game probably for Chris Smith. And he's not going to be, sharing on a timeshare with anybody. So Smith probably is. Lewis is a cash call, the popular call, the chalky call. I think Chris Smith would probably be my GPP call. Maybe even line him over to cash a little bit. Smith's the other play. You're right about that.
Yeah, and we in that first week against your Q's boys, your guy Sean Tucker eight Ohio for 181 yards and a touchdown. So
Mhm.
even against Duquesne's, they gave up 82 to Garrett Owens and then 77 to Billy Lucas. They're I believe they're backup. So they gave up a lot of yards on the ground. I think Smith makes sense. And if you're going to go the Rourke option, you may not be able to play Tuggle with Rourke. I was just starting to try to do that build with Chris Smith as captain, and it looks like it's not quite possible. So if you do Rourke, you probably have to fade Tuggle and go Allison and just hope Tuggle doesn't score the touchdowns. Otherwise, I think it's just pairing up Tuggle with Allison. Looking at like really the first round of projections, it's Lewis, Rourke, Smith, Tuggle, and Allison as your top 5 scorers with Walton and the kicker right behind. So that's going to be your chalky build there, probably minus Rourke, unless people decide they're going to fade Tuggle, which I could see. I think Tuggle maybe people are sour up that price. So we may get Tuggle a little over-owned, which I'm fine with, because if they get anywhere close to the red zone, he's going to punch it in. So I think that about wraps up the showdown slate. It's an ugly one. So play light. 2-game slate Friday. Tomorrow we'll be covering the main slate on Saturday, which Pete and I both agree is probably it's a young season. So it's nothing to say it like this and be like, oh my God, really? It is the best slate of the year so far, I'd say. But again, it's a young season, but there's a lot to like about it. I can't wait to talk about it. Friday, UCF -7 against Louisville. We have a 67.5 over under. Points will be scored. Maryland versus Illinois. We have a -7.5 for Maryland, 16.5 over under. Lots and lots and lots of points, Pete. Let's talk about, we have time. We'll talk about the UCF UL game first. Right now, Louisville, man, it's Malik Cunningham or bust, it feels like. I rolled with him on that. I think it was the midday slate last week, and at the 7-6 price. He had another 30, another 2 rushing touchdowns, so we know he's going to get that value on the ground. He did throw for 277, which was encouraging. But really, it still looks like the running game is kind of meh. Mitchell did run for 90. I'll give him that. And he was involved in the passing game. I am a little bit worried about him. And then receivers for Louisville, man, Justin Marshall is a kid I think is going to have a nice season. He caught a touchdown last week, so that's nice. Braden Smith is kind of up and down. Watkins is way just not the WR1 like people were talking about. Marshawn Ford's kind of the baby blanket. But there's not a lot to like for the receiver. So really for me, if I'm running Louisville guys, it's still Cunningham or bust. Where I like targeting, the weapons in this game would be for UCF. Isaiah Bowser, man, at 5'9", the pricing on this Friday slate's broken again. It's a small slate, but Bowser, he's the bell cow for them. Scored 4 touchdowns last week on 12 carries. Granted, it was against Bethune-Cookman, 31 fantasy points, but against Boise State, they fed him the ball. 33 carries for 172, 33 fantasy points, a touchdown. He was involved in the passing game. This is a really refreshing to see UCF, because how much of a nightmare, how much has UCF, like a different coaching staff, tortured us over the last 3 years with playing 4 different running backs. It looks like we finally don't have to worry about that. Yep. And Bowser's going to have himself a nice season. So I think, we roll Bowser here with confidence, right?
Yeah. And you did see in that Boise State game, and they were really struggling to get receivers open. And they took some shots downfield and they couldn't separate. And then all of a sudden, once it started running the ball with Bowser and they had to respect the run a little bit, all of a sudden they're finding room on the outside and scheming, getting them underneath throws. So Bowser, I think, it's been a huge play to this offense. 5.9 total of the price, probably the top price of the slate of the week. And this kid's, he's done nothing but, he's averaging 100 yards a game, 4 touchdowns. So he's the key to this offense. And once they got rolling, they started relying on Bowser and to keep the defense honest. And all of a sudden, boom, it opened up, Jalen Robinson and Ryan O'Keefe and the rest of these guys. So to me, Isaiah Bowers is pretty much a top play at 5'9". He's
everyone's going to have him because there's really no other choice.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lock and load. Where you're going to find some separation is with these receivers, and we're seeing a high passing volume already which we saw last year. Gabriel's a nice play. I think we can both agree. 8-6 is fair for him. It's really going to be, Gabriel and Baby Tua, or Gabriel and Cunningham, I think, is the decision you're going to make. But looking at the targets for the wide receivers, you've got it concentrated at the top. So Ryan O'Keefe, 17. Brandon Johnson, 12, 16, Jalen Robinson, 13. And then your next closest is Isaiah Bowser with 6. So while you do have those weapons there spread out a bit, you do have double-digit targets in 2 games for those 3 guys. Johnson has caught 12 of the 16, O'Keefe 11, and Robinson 8. And Robinson and Johnson have scored touchdowns. So who do you like best in this receiving core? Because Robinson's 8-1, Johnson's only 5K, and then O'Keefe's 6-3. I think O'Keefe's probably maybe the best if you want to go by targets, but Johnson at 5K has got some real upside there, I think.
I know. And I'm probably going the other way, because just talking, not talking money, just talking straight, raw, talent points. I still think Jalen Robinson is still the guy, and he's the exact type of receiver that has killed Louisville over the last few years. So at the end of the day, Robinson is the play, but he's 8-1. I haven't made a lineup yet. Can you get him in there? I'm not sure. But Robinson's my play. But then beside that, though, O'Keefe's kind of like Robinson, just small. He's a small kid, but he can catch some passes in traffic. So and Johnson's a bigger dude. Brandon Johnson's a bigger guy. So what's Johnson? 5K, O'Keefe 6'3". Probably at the end of the day, it's probably Brandon Johnson. Even though I want to play Jalen Robinson, I'd probably take that 3K discount on Brandon Johnson. Probably. I know you just said the numbers though, but what's he got? 2 games, 16 targets. So his second target's O'Keefe. Yeah. So raw points to me is Jalen Robinson, Johnson, and then O'Keefe. But then I guess for point per dollar, it'd be Brandon Johnson, O'Keefe, and then Jalen Robinson. Robinson's expensive, but I'm telling you, I think Jalen Robinson's gonna have a huge game here this week.
Yeah, I mean that's a call, because he's probably not going to be that highly owned, because you play Gabriel and one of the other QBs, it's going to be tough to fit him. So yeah, I don't mind that. I think I could see it. The touchdowns are definitely there. But yeah, that Johnson 5K price is going to be tough to really get away from. What about the Louisville receivers? Are you? I kind of said my piece with it. I'm just, if I was using anyone from Louisville, it would probably just be Malik, because he does us right. Seemingly, even if they get blown out, he gets his. So would you be targeting his guys, maybe like a Marshawn Ford, his baby blanket at 3.5, or is that just a fade?
Here may be my sneaky call a day and GVPs, but at 3.4, you got Amari Huggins Bruce at 3.4. Okay, now, on a season right now, he's got 169 yards, including a long of 93, of course, on 6 catches. So he actually ranks 3rd in receiving yards in ACC. So, but at 3.4,
he had a big game. He had a big game last week.
I don't have I have UCF's numbers in front of me though. What was his targets look like?
So let's see here. So last week he was targeted 7 times, caught 5 of them for 152 yards. The week before that, 2 for 18 on 4 targets.
So he's the lead target guy on the team.
11 targets through 2 games so far. Yep.
And the closest to him is Marshawn Ford. I love Marshawn. I'm a huge Marshawn Ford guy. But I want to say Braden Smith's like the guy, but he's been so quiet though. Yeah, I mean he did return a punt for a touchdown. If that means anything, but at the end of the day, I think Braden Smith is your one there. I mean he is your top receiver at 4.8. But Higgins Bruce, I mean obviously there's a reason he's getting targets. I mean he's getting 11 targets and 7 receptions in 2 games, 170 yards. We did that 93-yard throw, but
they're desperate. They're desperate for somebody to get open, right? The Louisville guys in the game 1, they weren't getting open, and it's from based off of that. What Huggins Bruce numbers remind me of is the Des Fitzpatrick of last year, who would break those big touchdowns. So you could be onto something here.
And Marshawn Ford's only 3.5. In that showdown last week, he was expensive against Ole Miss. Now he's down at 3.5. And I like Marshawn Ford. I always thought he was gonna I think he's got a big season this year with Malik. So,
and he's a guy that's gonna get targets in the red zone no matter what.
Definitely
so that's the nice thing about Ford.
Yep.
Yeah,
been around. His vet knows the system. So I would probably take Ford over Huggins Bruce, but at GPPs, I'd have no problem taking a flyer on Huggins Bruce at 3-4. I think the receiver here is probably Braden Smith with Malik, but Malik does so much. But this Louisville's a weird team though too, right? I mean, Jalen Mitchell is only 4'9", the runner. But then you got Hall, peeking around the corner. To me, this game, this is all about, I like Louisville, it's all about Cunningham and then rolling back the UCF guys, Gabriel. There's your choice. I mean, if you got, are you playing it? We haven't gotten to the other game yet, which we do have a decent quarterback, but are you playing Gabriel over Cunningham? I mean, we do know Cunningham with that rat, he's staying in the pocket longer this year. But I know you're a Gabriel guy, right? But Gabriel,
I like them both. I mean, I like them both, but I would, if in a vacuum, if I can just make one, price not mattering, yeah, I would say Gabriel every time.
Gabriel, right?
Because he's gonna throw. I mean, he's a lock for damn near 40 pass attempts, 300 plus yards, and the multiple touchdowns is going to be there. You see in two games this year, he's over 100 rushing yards too.
He's scrambling. Yeah, I was gonna say he's
rushing a little more. Yeah, I mean, we always knew he could, but he's doing it more now. So it's early, but it's nice to see. So I would be taking. He's a 1K more than Cunningham. I guess if you're paying that 1K more, is it worth it for 5 to 8 points more than Malik? Maybe not. But it's certainly a lot more safety. Gabriel's path to 35 plus is a lot easier than Malik's. Although I do like both. I mean, the two, him and Malik are guys I used all the time last year. So let's talk about Maryland, Illinois, and see how we're going to build this lineup here. So right now I've got it minus, what do I got? My wife just said that, minus 7.5, 60.5 over under for Maryland. And there is some bit of injury news here. It looks like for Illinois. He just burned a lot of people that week 0, but Mike Epstein sounds like he's not going to play. I think that's now official. So that means we got to look back to Chase Brown. And I know Chase Brown was atop the depth chart that first one against Nebraska, and he burned a lot of people and only got the 5 carries. But you see, he bounced back nicely last week against was it Virginia? I believe it was Virginia. They got smacked. But he had 41 yards, a touchdown, 4 catches, 28 yards. So he's only 4.5. I know Hayden and Love are still there. Reggie Love's a guy they really like. He only had 1 carry though last week. And Hayden is still going to be getting some carries, even though he only got 1 carry. But with Epstein out, those guys are going to be in the mix. But on paper, Chase Brown should be right back in that RB1 spot. However, we know Illinois likes to use all their running backs. Jakari Norwood had 4 carries last week for 35 yards. He's going to be in the mix as well. So this Illinois running game, even with Epstein out, are you back interested in Chase Brown, or are you just kind of like, well, fuck it. I know Hayden's going to pilfer. I know Norwood's going to get more, there's just a lot of wackiness with this Illinois rushing offense. And even though it looks now like Chase Brown will be the guy, at least for this game, Maryland can't stop the run. They haven't been able to for quite some time. So it's going to be a good game script for them. But are you gun shy on Brown, or what's the deal?
I probably am, even though I do like Chase Brown, because now I've been seeing all week about Josh McCray. He's a true freshman. And I'm hearing all this talk about Josh McCray and how he's emerging and everybody's, showing all this promise. And let me see. He's touched the ball 12 times, same amount of times as Chase Brown. So,
yeah,
I was all on Chase Brown before that first game of the year too, and he was like my sleeper play of the week. But right now, I think Brown's probably still gonna be your guy, but I can't touch this. I can't. You know how they are. It's nice that Epstein's out, but I'm worried about Josh McCray, and if anything, maybe take a chance on McCray. And what's McCray's price? I don't even.
He's min-priced. I mean, it's crazy that I've seen out. They're still going to use 5 running backs because Norwood's going to factor in the mix too. Yep. It's just, it's annoying. They love to run the ball, but there's just too many heads up there.
Yep, this McCray kid's a big kid though too, and he's 6'1", 240. No, you can't be touching this. If anything, I'm running Fleet Davis from from Maryland at 5'3". Why would I touch Brown at 4'5" when I can get Fleet Davis for $800 more, or even like Isaiah Jacobs for even cheaper?
And I get it because that's Maryland. Well, obviously we're looking there, but like I said, Maryland's rush defense just hasn't been good for a couple of years now. Letty Brown just tore him up a couple of weeks ago, and it's tough because I think somebody is going to come out of here. But yeah, it may be too risky for your main lineup.
Definitely for main
Speaking
lineup.
of running backs, on the Maryland side, you mentioned Fleet Davis, definitely there at 5'3". He's already up over 189 yards, YPC of 7.3, solid touchdown, 5 catches on the year. So definitely Fleet Davis paired up with Bowser is the way you want to go there. You mentioned Jacobs, who's 3'7". Yeah. He had 14 carries against West Virginia. Penny Boom looked pretty good against Howard, although that was Howard. So, it's really, for me, it's Fleet Davis and Bowser. And then, there's a lot of guys in that 5K range that make too much sense. So I'm with you on the Fleet Davis play, but I got to dig into it because somebody on that Illinois backfield they're going to stomp. And I would love to be on them, but it might be too hard to predict.
It probably is for cash. Remember, this Maryland offensive line's only given up 3 sacks this year. So
yeah,
I really do. And Illinois ranks last in the conference in both total yards, 41.7, and pass defense, 311.7, 170 yards per game, which is probably much bottom, 33.7. Fleet Davis is a lock. And then, if you had a crystal ball, I would like to be Chase Brown, and I think I have a gut feeling it's going to be. But at 4 or 5, the 4 or 5 is not expensive, but I think it's expensive. We don't know where the hell they're going to go with it, though, too. You have no idea.
This is a good slate for being a smaller slate. This is a good one to run 3, 4, 5 lineups just for the purpose of rotating. Even if it's just that spot, you take your main and you rotate Brown, and you go and get the McCray kid, then you go to Norwood. Just rotate through the running backs for exposure and guarantee yourself, go in that $1 and make 10 lineups and rotate all these running backs. I think that's a very, very wise idea. Let's talk about wide receivers. We'll talk about quarterbacks here at the end on this game. But, Isaiah Williams, he's looked pretty damn good.
4-7
against Virginia, come off a 5 for 41 game. He had 8 for the 101 against UTSA. 4.7 is a good price for him. He's made that move over to a wide receiver from quarterback, and it's been as good as everybody hoped, I think. And he's definitely a guy that I could see using in my main lineup this Friday and feeling pretty good about it. Just pulling up his target numbers. So in the first 3 games, he's got 31 damn targets, 8 against Nebraska, 8 against Virginia, and then 15 against UTSA, 183 yards and a touchdown. So they are getting him the ball. He's been as good as advertised. So definitely feeling, him. Everybody else in this is going to be kind of random. Daniel Barker kind of jumps out if people are looking at game logs, but it was against UTSA. On the Maryland side, you guys know I wrote up Demas that first week as a GPP guy, and he went ballistic against West Virginia, 6-133 and a touchdown. Followed that up with 6-128, a touchdown, 7-2. So for me, because I know you said Robinson may end up being, the slate breaker, and I could see that. But for me, I like the Demas side of things for 7-2, a little bit cheaper, heavily targeted, and just a really strong option. Obviously the number one, Raheem Jarrett's there doing some damage too. He had a 6 for 122 and a touchdown game. He's looked strong. Jay Sean Jones has looked strong, but I'm a really big fan of Demas. I've been really kind of chatting him up and talking him up for GPPs. And now that it's a short slate, I think that we definitely want to be on him. 2 games, 16 targets, 12 catches for 261 and 2 touchdowns. Obviously that's going to start as they play some real competition. His numbers may go down a little bit, but then again, they may not. And he's been a solid guy. In 2019, he had 629 yards, 6 touchdowns, a little bit of regression last year, 365 and 4. But I don't know. I'm on the Demas train, man. So the Maryland offense looks really strong in this game. I think they're going to put up some points. What are you thinking about the pass catchers here?
To me, Demas is the guy, but when you're looking at a $1,700 difference between Demas and Jarrett. Once again, Demas is the guy, but then you got Jarrett $1,700 less when he's one less target, same amount of receptions. I mean, of course, Demas more yards per reception. I mean, that's a really potent 1-2 right there. If you can get both of that, that's a great line, especially a great stack. You can get both those guys with Tua. But I have no problem going down to Jarrett at 5.5. Man, I think 5.5 is way too cheap against this Illinois defense right now. So of course, I like both of them. But if I can't get the Demas, I have no problem running Jarrett at 5.5. No problem at all.
Yeah, it's kind of the same situation that we're in with UCF, where you really like Robinson, but and I like Johnson, and you do too. But it's like we don't necessarily need to pay up for Robinson because we got the cheaper guys. You don't necessarily need to pay up for Demas because you have cheaper guys there. Even with Ja'Shawn Jones, his targets haven't been nearly as much, but he's caught all 6 of the targets thrown his way for 52 yards, and he's fairly cheap, and he's going to do some damage against Illinois as well. So. Valid point for going Jared. I'm a Demas guy. I'm gonna have a hard time not using Demas, I think, but it depends on your build, and what 2 QBs you're gonna go for. So baby Tua at 8K, your decision is Gabriel and Malik or Gabriel, I think, and baby Tua at 8K. So are you going to be using him? Because he's been strong, 28 fantasy points, 23 against Howard. He's completed over 70% of his passes on the season so far through 2 games, 76. He's got a little rushing upside, I suppose, not much, but he's shown it in the past. What do you think about using him?
Right now,
is he GPP over Malik, or is he okay to run in cash?
I think you can run him in cash. It's $400 more than Malik, and you definitely know where the targets are going. And he's like we just got done talking with the receivers. I think Tua's in a really good spot here. Also, what's their implied is 34, UCF's 37, Louisville 30. I think right now my top 2 are the UCF quarterback and Maryland quarterback. I mean, of course, I'm not giving any secrets here, but I think that Illinois is giving up 170 yards per game. Oh, no, it's not rushing. So Illinois is giving up 311 yards per game in the air. Definitely compared to Central Florida's only giving up 259. Yeah, so two and Gabriel are your top 2 quarterbacks, I think. I love Malik. I feel bad because I feel it's like something personal. I'm not gonna if I don't play him in cash. It seems like I do every game, but I think Tua and Gabriel are actually the top 2 plays. But I'll get Malik in somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really close. And Malik maybe even gets the nod simply because his rushing upside. But I think at the end of the day, yes, Baby Tua is gonna be putting up some points against this offense, and he's got the receivers to take care of business when he throws it in the air to them. So you can't go wrong. I'm looking at a lineup that I like a lot, where if I go Tagovailoa, I have like 5-3 left, so I'm just short of Jarrett. So if I go Malik, then I can get Jarrett. So that's going to be a decision for me, because if I play both Maryland wide receivers, then I probably have to play the quarterback. So there's some definite leverage spots in this 2-gamer that you wouldn't think that you would normally have. And the decision on an Illinois running back, which may be only GPP only anyways at the end of the day, but I kind of like it for a small slate. I kind of like it. I'm not going to go crazy on it by any means, but it's definitely a favorable slate. All right, so we're going to talk some prize picks. I'm going to pull that up now. And before we do that, let's talk. Do you want to give, just to kind of wrap up that slate with a bow, maybe not necessarily a 3-man core because it's so small, but like, two core, that's not the quarterbacks. Some, 2 core at the running back or wide receiver spots.
Yeah, Bowser and Fleet Davis.
All right, yep. So expect those guys. Yeah, so expect those guys to be very chalky for good reason. When you're looking at the running backs, I agree. There's really not a lot to like in cash. Those are the 2 guys that you're going to know are going to get the work. Mitchell for Louisville may end up getting some ownership. I'm not a huge fan of his, just because they lose rushing yards to Malik and then maybe Chase Brown. So really it looks like a 2 running back week or a slate and then a 4 wide receiver slate for me at this moment in time. You guys know I talk about running 4 running backs all the time. This is definitely not one where I even see myself running 3. unless I nut up and play Chase Brown.
Right.
All right, so we're going to talk prize picks. We're going to talk about prize picks for the showdown slate and if it's up, this 2-gamer. So let's pull it up and see what we got here. All right. Okay, Bowser over 20 fantasy points. I think you got to love that because he's probably going to push for 25 plus with the work that he gets. So noticing his fantasy point total right away over the 20, definitely a fan of that. Did you see something that just popped out? I think I heard.
It might be more of a gut call, but I have Chris Smith over 74.5 rushing.
Okay.
So I have more of a gut call. I do like it, and they're pretty tight so far. What I'm seeing here, we got for quarterbacks for passing yards. You got O'Rourke 146. Malik, what do you think about Malik 241 passing?
I don't really like to mess around with his passing props too much, to be honest.
I'm thinking about almost going under. He got 468 in his 2 games, but it's one shit game, one. Yeah, you can't mess with that.
Isaiah Williams over 4.5 receptions. You see, he had 5 catches against Virginia, 8 against UTSA. So I think that he's going to be seeing in the passing game. He's really the one that you can rely on. So I like him for 5 plus. So I'd like to hit that one.
He's the whole receiving core right now. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we've been doing pretty good. The receptions props are actually the best for me so far. I've been hitting those the highest mark of any. Williams hasn't been under 5 receptions in any of his games. He had 6 against Nebraska too. But that's the one that we've been hitting the most is the reception prop. So I'm definitely going to hit that.
Over 5 too.
Yep, I can see that. As far as receiving yards, maybe a little Brandon Johnson over 57.5. They have Jalen Robinson over at 107.5. So kind of like Brandon Johnson there for 60 plus receiving yards, I think.
Yeah. I think the Brandon Johnson one, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely solid. As far as rushing yards, I think I agree with you on the Chris Smith play. I think Tayon Fleet Davis could hit the over 79.5. Malik Cunningham's rushing yards are typically pretty strong. I would have to think it over more, but 52.5 seems semi-favorable. And then as far as passing yards go, you had mentioned, they're all pretty high. For not looking towards the next game on Saturday. The quarterback ones are all pretty high. You could maybe hit unders, but I wouldn't dare not hit under on like Gabriel because I could see him hit 330 plus. Same thing with Talia, but I don't think I see any favorable there. So receiving yards, I think I agree with you there. Rushing yards, I agree with you on the play that you picked there. What was it? Chris Smith over 74.5. Isaiah Williams over 4.5 receptions. You said Jarrett over 5 receptions, and then Brandon Johnson over 57.5 receiving yards. I think those are I'm all settled into those nice. And I could even see maybe Isaiah Williams over 44.5 receiving yards, but I much prefer his reception prop over that. So those are the ones.
Isaiah Williams is the man, especially in DFS with that 4.7 price. I think he's and he's gonna be sneaky too. I don't think people are gonna play Isaiah Williams that much.
Yeah, because you're right. People may just try to stack up the Maryland receivers with UCF receivers, and maybe Williams goes on the radar, and that's maybe our leverage. Because he's a lock on this one because Maryland's defense it was nothing last year, and so far I know they played Howard, but against West Virginia in the game that they won, Doge threw for 277. Letty Brown rushed for 2 touchdowns. There's nothing that scares me about the Maryland defense. They're going to be something that we can target. They're going to be in a lot of shootouts. They're going to be fun for fantasy purposes. So, all right, that's it for the show. We have a same time tomorrow, 6 PST, 9 EST, the slate breakdown for Saturday's 12-game main slate. Then I'll be back Saturday morning. That'll be the hour earlier than last, 7 a.m. PST, 10 a.m. EST. So be there for any last minute news, lineup breakdown, step chart stuff, course. And then later in the day, I'll have write-ups for those later slates. And in the premium Discord room, I'll be talking late night slate. Because like I said, that's the one I feel very confident in. We're crushing it. We have a lot of edge. Pete, you've got another MLB show. Or are you done for the week on MLB?
Oh, well, we have one, I guess, Friday night. Tomorrow night we have a CFB. Yeah, Friday afternoon, I believe, 6 o'clock.
Okay. That's right. Okay, so no soccer. All right, cool. Well, appreciate it, Pete. Thanks as always. We'll see you tomorrow, and good luck to everybody on the showdown slate tomorrow. Just remember, don't go too crazy on it. Save some of your bankroll for the weekend.
Exactly.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck.
Peace.